up, everybody? My name is James D. Fiore, and this is Black Ball. Today, friend of the show is here, and I'm not going to go on a prolonged introduction because he really needs none. Because his name is Spencer Rice, aka Spenny. Spenny, how are you, buddy?
I'm well. Welcome back.
Oh, thank you. You look like a farmer today.
I I smell like one too, probably. I haven't
Oh,
showered yet. But
okay.
yeah, I kind of go for the country look.
I've learned something over the years that there are a lot of women out there that really, really, really like plaid shirts on men. Don't know what it
Well, I
is.
can
I don't
tell
know.
you this. If you watch the new country music videos, they have the hottest chicks. That's just a fact. I hate new country. I like old country. But you gotta call the strikes in the.
Listen, I've said this to a couple people, but new country and modern day rappers have a lot more in common than I think people think. Um,
Huh?
it's a bunch of fellas talking about real shit about their lives. They always have hotties in the videos. They are cousins.
Well, there you
Probably
go.
not probably not in the South, but they are otherwise they are cousins. Um, Listen, I know you're funny because for a lot of reasons, but for this particular reason I'm thinking of right now, for since I've known you, you've had a love hate relationship with the broad overarching topic known as politics. I've seen you swear off talking about politics. I've seen you then just go full tilt about politics the next day. I told you this in the chat that I wanted to have you on for a specific reason. Now I just want to disclaim this because you'd be stupid not to. I'd be stupid not to. When it comes to certain subjects, and these subjects are the most polarizing ones, whether it's like abortion, they're also the most fun to talk about. Abortion or religion as a whole, or anything to do with the state of Israel, it becomes littered with landmines that makes it very difficult to have a robust discussion.
Correct.
I was wondering if you could please be really specific about your about the finer points that you may have regarding this Israel Hamas conflict. Just a bit of background. It was October 7th. Hamas assembled, I don't know what it was, like 3,500 of their terrorists, militants, whatever you want to call them, whatever your political, preference for that terminology happens to be. I'm going to try to take a spectator look at this. I don't really want to give away what my feelings are because, to be honest with you, I don't know if I'm qualified to have them in a substantive way. But however, so on the October 7th, about 3,500 Hamas members encouraged onto Israel proper and just started mowing down civilians at music venues, in their houses. It was fucking awful. It was a horrible terrorist attack by anybody's measure. And then ever since then, Israel has launched an aerial assault and a ground invasion. And now we're at a place, and now this is sad, but we're now at a place that has become kind of familiar territory when it comes to conflicts that Israel has with their neighbors in the Middle East, where now the question of proportion is being talked about, civilian death tolls being questioned depending on what the source is. As a Jewish person, though, I would feel probably different than I do about it right now because I don't technically have a dog in this fight. So I look at it as a spectator and I don't have emotions, but I also probably don't have the background either. So I was wondering if you could give me sort of your take, as broad or as narrow as you'd like, on what you see about the Israeli Hamas conflict.
I'll tell you everything that I think. The first thing I'd like to say was I had the choice, with somewhat of a, minor follower count, to just not say anything. Uh,
Yeah.
people people tend not to say anything because in my business, because they don't want to get isolated and it may be canceled. Some people don't talk about it because of fear of some kind of reprisal. I personally made the decision to talk about it. We could talk about this thing for at least the full hour.
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and barely scratch the surface of
That's right.
what's going on so many levels. So what I'll do is I will tell you everything that I've felt and how I feel about it, warts and all. So first thing I'd like to say is uh, I try not to be tribal, uh, whether it's white or Jewish or blues music or whatever tribes we end up in. I make an effort not to be tribal because I think that's almost really stepping backwards in time. But I feel the future, we will become less tribal. Racial intermixing, etc., will egg that on for sure. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I think. I certainly seem to be wrong. This particular October 7th attack has really stretched me to the limit in terms of not being tribal. And in fact, I can honestly say I'm incapable of completely not being tribal when it comes to this. Keep in mind, I'm not a religious Jew. If I never walk into a synagogue again, that would be fine. I'm not a fan of the Orthodox Jews, the extreme Jews, as well as any other religion. I don't like the extremes. I think of myself as a centrist, basically.
Yeah.
Having said that, yeah, I get triggered, and it's very hard not to get triggered by what happened on October 7th. Uh, and the reality is, for me, and I'm only speaking for myself,
Yep.
okay, which is that I have great sympathy and empathy for civilians uh, on both sides. Certainly, also on the Palestinian side because of the disproportionate amount of power that Israel has. However, Israel is finding itself in a situation with Benjamin Netanyahu at the helm, not a uh, not a socialist left winger, that's for sure.
Not
So,
even a centrist. Yeah.
not even a centrist. He's very far right wing, and we could talk about the disproportionality of the response to that horrendous attack and what good will it do us. The reality is the man is in power. If Biden wants to lean into him by threatening to stop aid to Israel to get him to control himself, I mean, that's an option. I don't control what goes on in the Mideast. I only say that because the way people talk about it is so narcissistic that their opinion actually matters. They're living in Canada like I am. Thank God right now it's a safe place to be. And everybody seems to have an opinion. Uh, the Hamas charter, what the leader said yesterday, the dean posted, uh, I mean, they don't pretend to be anything other than they want to wipe Israel off the face of the planet. And I think implicit in that is the annihilation of the Jewish people. That's the main thing for me. Forgetting the civilian casualties, forgetting the response, you're dealing with a group of lunatics that are hell bent not only on destroying Israel and killing Jews, but probably if they had their way, would kill anybody that disagrees with them, including their own people, right?
Yeah.
So to me, the moral aspect of this stops right there for me. Okay,
Yeah.
so I can't control who's elected in Israel. I can't control the fact that Israel was gifted the land by the United Nations post World War II. That's history. That's what it is. I mean, if you want to think about it, we're all living on land that isn't ours here in
Yeah.
Canada, right? Let's be honest. Uh, so that's it. So I'm 1,000,000% on Israel's side. Uh, I wish there was someone that was maybe a little less harsh in power, but and it's getting tired saying it. But how do you deal with an enemy that is hell bent on your destruction? Talks about it publicly. They don't even hide it, and then they hide under hospitals. I mean, this isn't conjecture, or I'm not guessing here. This is a fact.
No, no, I
They
know.
hide amongst civilians, and in fact, I believe they want the civilians' death because their own civilians, because it's good PR for them.
Yeah, it
And
creates more terrorists, right?
It does. That's the other side of it. The question is, if they're being taught to hate Jews from in school, then is it really going to create more terrorists? They're creating their own terrorists, right? So it's really an act of self-preservation, in my view. We can argue and talk about how far they've gone and what they've done. I don't believe what Hamas says ever in terms of the casualties, but I've seen the pictures. This is this is a horrible situation on both sides. It is horrible on every. You've got the almost the worst of the worst ruling Gaza, and you've got Benjamin Netanyahu, a right-wing lunatic who's got people in his party that have even talked about using nuclear weapons. So
Yeah.
again, I can't control any of that. So what I tend to do is I pare it down to the elements of which I can get my head around. And like I said earlier, I don't like religious extremes, no matter where they come from. And Gaza is being run by a completely religious extreme. Now, where it gets complicated for me is the reaction that people have had. I remember when it first happened, there was a bunch of supposedly woke people that decided they were going to make bin Laden their new hero, because big bad Israel. I mean, I think that's a manifestation. First of all, I was very sensitive and somewhat decent about wokeism. And now I've completely changed. I think woke is absolutely horrible. Of course, there's good aspects to it. Everything there's good and bad to it.
If I may interject just for a moment, people
Yeah, of
get
course.
really hung up on the fact that there is a word out there that has conflicting terminology. Well,
Yeah,
welcome to the internet age. Like it doesn't,
yeah,
because I'm with you. Like when I think of woke, I don't think of people who just want what's best for everybody. I think of people who stand on a soapbox and preach and lecture sometimes when it's completely unnecessary. And that's sort of the way I look at wokeism.
yeah.
I don't think it needs to be. I don't think we need to recognize that term as people just who want equality. I can't because all of the examples that I see are all these like white Brooklyn, New York liberals lecturing people on how to treat people of color when those same people of color, if you poll them, are like, shut up, stop talking for us, right? So there is
Yes.
a yeah, there's that side to
The,
it.
the
I
other
was
thing
really
is,
disgusted when I saw I like by October 8th, the memes or the logo of the Palestinian terrorist with his parachute as if that was some sort of solidarity standpoint, and I'm just
yes,
like, this is like look at we can talk about occupation and settlements and all that kind of stuff, but you can't just give a carte blanche or a blank check to how you respond to what you feel is oppression. But on the same token, I'm the type of person where I'm like, I also can't give Netanyahu a blank check to how he responds to the terrorism. So it becomes this complex, and as it always does when Israel
conundrum. It's a
Israel
conundrum for sure.
yeah.
Let me just say this, but with the woke, and this never gets talked about. And I'll use myself as an example. When you're in university, when you don't really have a career yet, you probably don't have a family, and we live in a very narcissistic culture.
Hmm.
Uh, People of that age tend to glom onto movements
Yeah.
because it makes them feel important and it makes them feel that they matter. So, on one level, I'm not entirely surprised because I'll use myself as an example. At one point, embarrassingly enough, I was like one of my best friends took a lot of acid and he became a Hare Krishna devotee.
Wow,
Wonderful guy.
that's a lot of acid.
Yeah. So and then through him, I kept being friends with him. He got me into this sort of a vegan before vegan was a word. It was just a purely vegetarian diet. I would go for lunches at the Krishna temple in Toronto. And I became for a small period of time while I was in college, a militant vegetarian,
Oh wow.
lecturing people, lecturing people about the cruelty to animals and this and that. And
From
I believe.
militant vegetarian to wearing a dead squid on your head.
Yes, exactly. So I do give them a little bit of a pass because of the age. A lot of them are, and I know what it's like to be that age, and you want to matter, and you want to be important. So that's that. I have no problem with Palestinians, people or people who aren't Palestinian protesting the war. 100% I support it. I do have a problem when it turns into harassment, road blocking, all the stuff that, some of the stuff that we've seen. And I said the exact same thing about the convoy. So I do strive for some consistency in my thought. It's hard in this day and age, but to me, it's the same thing. So that's that. At the end of the day, you look at the history. You look at and I don't think Israel is perfect. I never would say that. I'm sure they have some blood on their hands throughout history, but by and large, coming out of the Holocaust and all that I've learned about Israel, they've offered peace. They don't want peace, and they say it. They don't want peace. They want to get rid of Israel. That is an untenable position. And unfortunately, a guy, I can't, Hillel something, who was on X yesterday, did a wonderful post. I should look it up and read it here about the global situation with this, all the different issues, and where he went through what was reasonable, what wasn't reasonable. I thought it was very good. I thought it was a very good thing. He basically, tried to decipher legitimate anti-Israel policy, protesting versus anti-Semitism. And he broke it down in a really good way. There's no question anti-Semitism exists. That doesn't mean all people that are against this war are anti-Semitic. I mean, these are all things we've heard on the media, we've talked about. But I don't want a war. And one of the best things he said was, it's like they think people that support Israel want this. We don't want this. I don't want this. I can't speak for other people. I don't want this. I don't want a war. I don't want dead babies on any side. I don't want any of that. But we live in a reality, right? It's just too easy. It's just too easy to say, war is bad. It's got to stop. It's just, it's an oversimplification.
Yeah, go ahead.
And it's not.
Yeah. Well, listen, I had a weird thought yesterday, actually. It was the day before yesterday, about how because the Russia-Ukraine war has been going on for like 2 years or whatever it's been now. When there's no Zelensky as part of the main cast of characters leading countries, it can be difficult for a lot of people. Like, listen, I think Zelensky is like, I think he's a construct. I think that he's been put on a pedestal to the point where, like, it doesn't matter what NATO gives him, doesn't matter what he does. His PR is so fucking good that he could do what Netanyahu's doing somehow, and they would just be revered as a hero. So it's a very weird thing when you look at the fog of war, when two simultaneous conflicts are happening. There's no Zelensky in the Israel Hamas.
Great movie, by the way, Fog of War, Errol Morris. Have you seen that movie?
I have. That was McNamara, basically put all his cards down. That was
amazing. It was an amazing film. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. And so, so when I see this conflict is so complex, it's got so much history behind it. And it leads to these weird ancillary things that a lot of people don't know about or don't think about or dismiss out of hand, including things like the United Nations resolutions that everyone on Israel's side thinks condemns Israel unfairly, and that may be true. I honestly don't know. I know that there's international law experts that say that any settlements that encourage on the 1967 borders is a violation of international law. And then, and I'm just unpacking this. I have no idea what the answer is because, again, I'm not an urban warfare expert. But I don't know how the Palestinians, especially if they were led by a more moderate version of the PLO, but anything other than Hamas, what would the answer be to how to respond to a much more powerful nation infringing on your land and building settlements? I don't know how.
The only one, I don't know if it's their land, to be honest with you, but and I don't know, and I love that you just said you don't know. You're not an urban warfare. That's what we need more of, is people being fucking honest about how little they actually know.
Yeah,
that would be nice, but that won't work on social media. So it's not going to happen.
Yeah,
right. So
there's none of that.
Yeah, and I don't want to get into the history, because I've read all kinds of stuff. I'm really not sure where the truth lies, but I do know Israel's there, and it's not going away. And to be honest with you, I'm happy about that Israel is there. I got to be honest. I just am. All this talk about colonialism and what are the words they're using now? The misuse of the word genocide. It's just appalling, and it's sad, and it's pathetic. But the truth is, I don't fucking know a lot of this stuff. I only know this is a situation that's going down, and it's the same with Zelensky, by the way. You hear that they're stealing money. We
Yeah,
are
but you
we
barely
are the
hear that.
victims. We are the victims of so much information and so little education, really, that it's very difficult to make your way through it, which led me to basically stop. And I know this is where we're going to go with this, to stop posting politics on social media. There was a number of reasons for it, and to be honest with you, I'm a little bit ashamed uh, at how much I did post on politics. The shame is only so far, because at the end of the day, I know I'm an addict. I have an addictive personality, and social media is nothing if not completely addicting. And there's no question in my mind about it. It's an addiction for most people.
Yeah.
It might be a soft addiction. It's not a heroin addiction, but it's an addiction. And I think I lost touch of how little I know, and my humility. And I got caught up in the hate and toxicity. And by the way, I still am. I still get triggered, even as I've
I know.
made
I can see it.
every effort not to, but I don't do nearly as much as I used to do.
You were upset, I think, at the I could get this wrong, but because you posted like a quote tweet on the same tweet like 4 times last week, and I don't know if it was like you said something like "deport this person" or something like that.
yes.
Like, yeah. So, what was that about? Was it just was it violence in the name of Hamas, basically? Like, what was it? Like,
It's been a few things. There's a group called the Goyim Defense League in Florida, and videos were coming out on the internet of these sons of bitches going to, and they're neo Nazis basically. I can't remember the guy's name, the head guy. He's been to prison a few times, and they go to Jewish homes, and they just go up to the line of legality, and they put their poisonous, toxic, anti-Semitic literature,
oh
and then
my
if an
goodness.
owner comes out, then they verbally assault them. Hey,
Yeah.
kike. Hey, kike.
And they
Your
try to
eyes are
try to
too close.
goad them, right? They try to goad them
Right,
to
right.
committing assault or whatever. Yeah.
And I have a visceral reaction to that. I just do. I can't believe, that it can happen, and yet I've gone with free speech, for example. I know that's a subject you're interested in,
Yeah.
where I've gone through uh, almost years of saying there has to be limits on it, because of people like that. And
Mm.
now I'm like, no, you can't, unfortunately. Because it's true. That is a real slippery slope. I know a lot of things, like gun legislation, they call that a slippery slope. I don't buy it. But with speech, it kind of is a slippery slope, and I begrudgingly have to say that if you don't hurt anybody physically and you don't break the law, you pretty much can say anything you want, and it sucks. And I hate to say that, and that's just my opinion. I
No,
don't know
no,
how
but
you enforce speech.
I think you're absolutely right. I think it's a generational thing too. When Noam Chomsky was on, he told me that the best way to fight bad ideas is with good ideas,
Right.
right? Like so, and he's as left as they come, but that would be completely counter to what the 20-something progressive would be
And
thinking
by the
about.
way, Noam Chomsky, who I think is kind of a hero of mine,
Yeah,
his thoughts on the Israeli Hamas situation is devastating for Jews. And so
yeah,
I disagree with him. Yeah, he's a
yeah,
million billion times smarter than me. I just disagree with him because he basically compares the Israelis to Nazis,
yeah,
literally.
yeah.
Uh, I don't know. Yeah, maybe that's the tribalism. It's also fucking
Well, there's also a
complicated.
diversity of opinion within Jewish circles. It's not like everyone is
Right,
on one side
right.
here, right?
Of
So,
course. But this is one guy who's, let's clearly say he's a intelligent guy with a tremendous knowledge of history. But he's also, I don't want to get into this, but he's also has a de facto position about the United States and power and hegemony and all that shit. So he's got a dog in the race in terms of his politics. I know that. He could tell me he doesn't, but I know that he does. But you know what's interesting is the old saying, "Politics have strange bedfellows." Because when the Israeli thing happened, uh, it was amazing to me that people that I had generally supported before that, uh, I turned on them, and then I started not supporting, but thinking, geez, the people I hated on the right, their views are much more aligned to me on this Israel thing than ever before. And that was fascinating to me, that I could be so fickle in a way. But I think that's the tribalism we talked about earlier. It's very
That's
deep.
also your because you reminded me months ago when you were on the show about the wolf analogy. That could be
Yes.
applied to the way that evangelicals support Israel because they don't think that they're going to be whisked up to heaven during the rapture. They believe that their Jewish comrades are going to hell,
No,
right? So
I'm talking more less spiritually, because that you know that what that means, right? When the rapture comes, which is never coming, because it's bullshit. When it comes, let's pretend hypothetically, then if the Jews don't become Christians, they go to hell. So it's a temporary kind of bizarre, uh, uh, I don't know what to call it, ethos that is just, it's so stupid. I can't even talk about it. It's just so, because I'm an atheist. I just don't buy any of that shit. What I'm talking about is the support for Israel responding to Hamas, which came from the right, and then AOC and so many on the left, the woke crowd in the universities, they didn't support Israel, and it really bothered me. And I'm not saying I'm right or I'm wrong. I'm just saying that's how it felt to me, and I felt betrayed, and I'm never
there
going to
is
forget it.
there is shades of the politics that we experienced after 9/11 happening too, because you know the parallels between Israel and America would be um, the idea that both of those countries have um, engaged in militarism outside of their borders into places in the world, and then blowback came in the form of terrorist attacks. That's, I think, a fair assessment. I don't think that anyone over in the Middle East, if America's never gone over there, would probably do 9/11. Right? I think
I
that's
know, but
obvious.
that doesn't explain the fundamentalist religious dogma that's
No, no,
that's
it
that
doesn't.
that's the head of
It
the
does.
spear,
No, it
right? So that
doesn't.
takes away. Yeah, I
But
mean,
what I'm
talk about
saying,
Trotsky.
what I'm saying is that the pattern then of response among populaces is that when the response to the terrorist attack takes place, it is immediately criticized because the idea is that the terrorist attack wasn't the first act of violence. It was whatever they were responding to. And that's where it gets really complex. I don't think it's overly complex where you can actually defend what Hamas did though on October 7th. And I
And
think
what
if
they did,
any
what they've been doing, they've been
well, this
lobbing
was a
missiles.
whole other level. This was a
They've been lobbing missiles for ages, and the thing is, they admit what they want. They
this
don't
was
hide it.
ISIS. This was ISIS level violence, though. This Hamas, they shoot their rockets, largely ineffective for the most part. They have good defenses, Israel, the Iron Dome defense and everything. But the idea that this terrorist attack on October 7th could be explained away by fighting against colonialism is just a bullshit proposition because any military expert would tell you that oh, what if Hamas sent 3,000 of their guys into Israel and just started slaughtering civilians? What do you think would happen? We're looking at it, and
Yeah,
everyone would have told them that if they asked anybody's advice at the time, which leads me to think that Iran wants this conflict to happen.
of
There's a lot of
course.
people that
So
think
does
that
Hamas.
Israel. There's a lot of people that think that Israel. I'm sure they didn't want the October 7th terrorist attack to happen, but there's a lot of people that think that Israel doesn't mind having Hamas in because it allows them to not have to worry about a two-state solution anymore. Because a lot of
Yeah,
the
there's
hardliners
that,
don't
and
care about
the
that.
idea that Israel let it happen so that they can do what they're doing now. The reality is, we don't know.
Yeah.
The reality is, we don't know. So then, my default position is, we're still dealing with, no matter what that answer is, with a group of Islamic fundamentalists that don't treat women well, that talk about grooming, that groom their people to hate, And it occurs on the Jewish side, no doubt, but I don't think nearly as pervasive. So that's the thing that I glom onto because I think it's real and I think it's true. If you have to pick a side, and by the way, let me tell you a quick story.
Yeah.
I'm Jewish. Both my parents are Jewish, but I grew up basically in like Rosedale, St. Clair and Yonge in Toronto. I
Mm-hmm.
went to my parents had money. They sent me to this private school that was a WASPy private school, and I never went to synagogue. I didn't. I had no idea what being Jewish meant. So one day I came home from school and I had a swastika that I drew on my arm, just in a
Wow.
pen.
Yeah.
Uh, my dad saw that and he absolutely flipped. Not just angry, but realized how he had completely neglected to teach me what being Jewish was and
Right.
what the swastika meant. So from that moment on, I was not forced because I was interested in it because I'm interested in history. I watched every kind of documentary film on the Holocaust and what happened to the Jewish people, and I got a very you know deep education into what it meant to be Jewish. So uh, I'm still not religious. I don't want to sound like a hypocrite. I'm not. I don't care for synagogues. I don't. Anyways, so that experience happened to me, which may, to a certain extent, explain my tribal reaction, because part of it's tribal, part of it's just rational, I think.
Mm.
Um, and Hunter Thompson talked about the meat hook realities of life, and we're living in the meat hook reality where, yes, Chomsky's probably 100% right about U.S. using their power and their military to make life better for really everybody. And I don't know. I can't control that. I don't know what to do about that, but I know it exists. I'm not naive about it. Uh,
Do
nothing's
you
perfect.
believe in concepts like generational trauma, where
Well, for sure. I think I'm a victim. That was why I told that story. I
yeah,
think that you can't.
it's generational trauma. It's not passed down genetically. I don't think that would be kind of weird. But it is
No.
a sort of inherited fear, and for good reason. By the way, it's not the Jews have not had a very good run on this earth. If you look at their history, there have been many, many times that they have been the attempted extermination of the Jews has been front and center as early as 80 years ago, right? Like
And the pogroms
and now
from
in the
and the
Middle East.
pogroms from Russia, like it goes back centuries.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm wondering when you learn, does the trauma come in the concept of generational trauma? Because I don't actually know the answer to this, but I'm sure it's not genetic because that would be like mysticism. But when you learn about the history, is that where the trauma embeds itself, and then
I can I
there
can
is
speak for I can speak for myself.
yeah,
When I made that change and my father forced me to understand what happened to the Jews, predominantly in the Holocaust, but throughout history, I would see black and white footage that we've all seen of the camps. And I'm talking about the when they're alive, not the bulldozing of bodies and all that stuff, which is
yeah.
just beyond anything. I would see these children and women and men half starved behind the barbed wire fences, and for me, it's emotional because I would see my friends that were Jewish in their faces,
Oh, yeah, okay,
and
yeah.
I think that had
That's powerful.
a
Yeah.
profound effect on me, which is why Holocaust denial is one of the lowest forms of human thought that you could possibly have. And I hate them. I hate to say it, but I do. I hate neo Nazis and I hate people that try to minimize what happened because it was all documented.
It's okay to
Uh,
hate Nazis.
so there's your trauma. Now I'm sure trauma is a spectrum, right?
Yeah.
So you go to Afghanistan as a soldier and you're around guns and that's one kind of trauma. What do they call it? Post traumatic stress disorder. I don't know if I
Mm.
go that far with me, but there's no question that if you're Jewish and you're interested in the history of Jewish people and how few there are, how few Jews there really are in the world,
Did you
and how
watch the movie?
successful.
Did you watch Golda Meir with
I haven't seen that yet. No.
it is great, and there's an interesting part where she's the former prime minister of Israel. She used to be the head of Mossad, I believe,
Yeah.
and she really interesting looking. She looks like a librarian. She smokes all the time. She was played by Helen Mirren, which she
Yes.
did a
I've
fantastic
seen the
job.
commercials.
Yeah. There was a part though where she invites Henry Kissinger to Israel to talk about whether or not the United States can supply the right type of arms or whatever for the conflict. And when they're in the kitchen, there's a person there who cooked. I don't remember what she made. What's the soup called?
Matzah
A
soup,
bor a
chicken,
borscht. A borscht.
borscht. Yes, that's
Yeah.
a Russian.
So yeah, so then and so he's like, "Oh, I can't eat. The Russians just fed me the last 2 nights, and I'm not really feeling well." And Golda Meir walks up and said, "She's a survivor, so it's polite to eat it in front of her." And it was really interesting because then she waited, and then Kissinger took a sip of the soup, and she felt like, "Good, now this person understands to be grateful in every moment because I had to survive Auschwitz." It
Yeah.
is so
And there, can I
re-
just say this? Because this,
yeah,
I had a very awful fight years ago with a friend of mine who I don't think understood that one of the anti-Semitic tropes, I guess they call them, is this idea that Jews are just whining and complaining and using, even worse, using the Holocaust as a way to gain sympathy. Uh, that's just, it's just, it makes me so angry, because I, I don't even have the words, but it's out there and it exists and people really believe that and they think that.
like a
Uh,
fundraising tool. I remember hearing stuff like
yeah,
that. Yeah.
fundraising, you name it. The
Well, you know who
reality is there's
actually it was
lots of
Mordecai Richler covered this in his book Barney's version. How he had a friend, a Jewish friend, that would always try to play on his sympathies for the Holocaust to get money out of him. But he made it funny, right? Like it
right,
wasn't
right.
like a
Woody
statement.
Woody Allen kind of has done that. He's waded into that water about the left wing Jews versus the right wing Jews, and
Yeah, Mel
I,
Brooks
I
too.
think what
Yeah,
a lot of people don't really understand about the Jewish experience was, unfortunately, because it's a kind of a racist world, the fact that Jews look white was a huge advantage we had over Asians, blacks, whatever. And I don't know if you're familiar with the movie Zelig, one of my all time favorite Woody Allen movies. You must see it, James.
okay.
Um, it's oh god, if you don't know it, it's basically done like an old. You remember those old newsreels?
Yeah,
News on the march. It's sort of Citizen Kane started with that,
right.
and it's a mostly the first bunch of the movie is just this newsreel about this guy named Leonard Zellman, who became known as Zelig, who was a Jewish guy, but he had this bizarre power where if he stood beside, let's say, a native Indian, his hair would grow long and his skin would turn, he would become an Indian. So he
Oh
became a
wow,
sort of um, uh,
that's like
symbol of,
magical blackface.
yeah, yeah, no, he became black, of course, if he stood by
Yeah,
a black guy. And it was really just kind of a metaphor. I think it's a metaphor for the Jewish experience of trying to blend in because coming out of the horrors of the Holocaust.
changing your
And
name, like that
well,
kind of
my
stuff.
name was changed by my grandfather. My
Yeah.
actual last name is Raysberg.
Okay.
My grandfather on my father's side changed it to Rice post World War II. So Kenny makes fun of that in the live show because he's always looking of ways to gaslight me. He's ashamed of being Jewish. But anyways, I'm not going
John
to
Stewart
change
got
it
the
all.
same. John Stewart got the same criticism.
Did he?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't remember what his name was. Hold on.
You
It's
know
pretty.
who's what? Have you been following Lee Kern?
No.
Lee Kern, if you go to X, he's apparently he was one of the writers and may have been in one of Sasha Cohen's
It's
Borat movies.
John Leibowitz. Stewart might have been a
No,
guy.
no, no. I'm not talking. His name's Lee. First name Lee, last name
No,
Kern.
I know. I just looked up what John Stewart's real name was, and then
Oh,
I just
Leibowitz. Yeah,
interrupted
well,
you. Yeah,
that's. I
keep
mean,
going.
you can go Mo Howard, the Three Stooges,
Yeah,
Jack Benny. They all changed their names to become
yeah,
less Jewish. I
yeah.
don't know if it was. I don't think it was a shame of being Jewish. I think it was a
Protection.
fear of being Jewish, and those are
Yeah.
that's a big distinction to make. And anyways,
I think if you're immigrating to America in like 1942 or something like that,
Yeah.
whatever the case may be. I think a sign of a good daddy would be a daddy that decides to like protect their family by, if I have to chop off a syllable off my name and increase the chances of my family being safe, you do
Yeah.
it, don't you?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I don't like. I would never go back and change it to Raceburg, mostly because I probably couldn't spell it. But anyways, it is what it is. It happened. I'm sticking with it. I don't
like
wear my Judaism on my sleeve at all. In fact, certainly the religious aspect, I'm I'm pretty publicly not in favor of religion in general. But it's
I feel that way when I go to a Greek restaurant. I never tell anyone that I'm Italian because I don't want them to know that my food is better than theirs. Right? Like,
So let me just finish with Zelig. So
yeah.
what Zelig was a metaphor, and it's such a great movie. And by the way, you watch it, the special effects in it it's like you're watching a movie reel from the 1920s.
Oh, nice.
It's it,
Like
it
the
and
hair on the film and everything. Like
yeah,
the
yeah, no, he would
yeah.
take the negatives and he would invite people over to the editing suite to walk all over them to make them look old and worn. There was stuff that sort of became what's the Tom Hanks movie, Forrest Gump. He was doing that
One of
kind of
my
stuff
all-time
where
favorites. Yeah.
he was putting himself into Nazi, like actual footage of Nazi rallies. It was remarkable and very well done, black and white. I rec everybody to see it, but it is fundamentally a wonderful metaphor for the Jewish experience, trying to blend in, right?
Mm.
Here you have a guy who not only trying to blend in, he's literally physically, he's so in fear. I think I'd have to ask Woody Allen of being targeted as a Jew, that his evolution has made him physically take on the attributes of whatever person he's with. It's
Just
absolutely brilliant.
self-protectionism in the form of instant evolution.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
it is, and it's funny. And then, of course, he ends up. This is when he was with Mia Farrow, and she was in all his movies. She plays a Dr. Eudora Fletcher, a psychiatrist who is tasked, and she wants to help him because it's a disorder that he has. And his parents, of course, turned him into a carnival act to make money off of him.
So it's a disorder. It's not dysmorphia. It actually does turn.
Well,
Right.
it's fiction, obviously, but she
No, I
sees
know.
it as a disorder. Yeah, she
Yeah.
sees it as a disorder. But it's a funny movie. It's got a lot of depth to it, especially that. And they talk about it in the movie where he's got, it's like a fake doc, a mock doc. So they have all these wonderful like interviews with rabbis and press people or whatever, talking about this fame, because Zelig was famous in this movie, so he became like a national legend because of this ability he had to turn into other people.
That's a great
It's a
concept.
fantastic movie. But anyways,
I
I
was. It's funny because when I first moved to Toronto, I lived in the annex, and I would go to the Free Times Cafe all the time.
I used to go there. Like the first time I ever played music publicly was at Free Times Cafe on College
Me
Street,
too.
and I vomited. I vomited outside before I went on stage.
I forget her name that owned it, the owner, but she was
Oh, I don't
lovely. And I learned by going there, and so it's not racism if you generalize an entire population with a compliment. I hope, but because Jewish
know.
people are some of the best conversationalists on the planet.
Yes.
I learned that in New York. I learned that in Toronto. It is so I really enjoy being sort of like enveloped inside a culture for like 5, 6, 7 hours or whatever, being like the only non whatever it is there, whether
Right.
it's like Jamaicans or Jewish people or Chinese people or Koreans, because you learn so much. It's like osmosis. And I real
Yes.
and I went home and I did the whole family tree thing, and I was and I brought it back to her name was Fran, actually, I believe, the Free Times lady, and I went over there and I was like, I'm 1/16 Jewish. I found out,
You
and
really?
she goes, that's why you can talk to us for as long as you do. Just like,
Yeah.
okay,
Did you hear about the Jewish man who walked into a wall with a heart on? He broke his nose. Did you hear that story?
no, but
Um,
I think this is the 1/16 Jewish part.
yeah, I was
Jew,
going to
yeah,
say that's why I
yeah,
thought of that. But look, Jews and Italians, they're very similar in many ways. I find,
yeah.
um, and as I said, I think we're hopefully moving towards as I've always liked to say, that I would like a less tribal world, except for food. That's got to. I would when I eat Italian food, I want fucking authentic Italian food. They can be tribal with their food, but I'm hoping intellectually and uh, you know in every other way, people start to see themselves as not in a tribe, but as part of a. And that's probably hopelessly naive. I realize that.
It is hopelessly naive, and here's why. We had uh, a worldwide pandemic, a health crisis, and it
Yes,
became the most polarizing issue of all time,
you
even
know,
though it was
it's
impacting all of us.
unbelievable.
You know, so my fear is that the much like the way that the Trump presidency sort of took a sheet, for lack of better words, off of all the racists and Sean put sunlight on them, so that we could all look at the overt racists now. Like we always knew they were there, but now they're feeling proud.
Yeah,
And Jews will not replace us, and all of that
yeah,
shit that came out after he was elected president. This conflict is doing the same thing when it comes to people who are just fervent anti-Semites. Also, people who say things like the Palestinian people are not even a people. Like there is a lot of like that and I don't think it's going away. It just keeps on getting more emphasized and more emphasized. I I would love to meet somebody who can one day figure out how to navigate the internet and social media and interactivity and algorithms and AI, where you somehow can make that socially unacceptable to the point where it goes away, the way that the N word goes away. A lot of people don't understand. It's not like half the population want to say the N word or do. It, Society itself was like, nah, we think that word has such a shitty history that we don't ever want to say it again. And people accepted that. It wasn't a decree upon a mountaintop by some do gooder. It was a universally accepted thing where it was like, I don't think we should say the N word. And I think that we need to figure out how to apply that concept and that principle to every polarizing issue where you don't have to dehumanize the other side in order to make your point. You can say that Israel is responding with disproportionate militarism without having to slag the entire fucking ethnicity. You know what I mean? Like,
of course, because everything is a spectrum, and that so is such an unsexy reality,
yeah.
because we're kind of built on binary thinking, unfortunately. But what was I going to tell you? I forgot. I lost my thought. What years of alcohol has
About
eroded parts. Well, I think
polarization.
I know what I was going to say, because we did a Kenny versus Spenny episode uh, called "Who Do Black People Like More," and of course, Kenny cleverly and obviously just bought them fried chicken, took them to strip joints, and gave them a good time. And I, of course, tried to take a higher road, and uh, I did what's called a racial retreat, where we had a cottage we rented and we brought them out, and I wanted to talk about, but in the comedy of it all was really what I think, and I think I said it in the show, which is I think we're all kind of racist and tribal, uh, deep down inside, because that's where we've come from. So to override that, it takes effort, and that's basically what I think. I mean, I can honestly say I have racist thoughts and feelings sometimes that I'm not happy about. In fact, my father, God bless him, I dated a black girl for a while. And when he found out I was dating a black girl, this is many, many years ago, he had to tell me that he didn't want me to do it. It was a terrible thing. The only difference was he was decent enough to say, I know that I'm wrong. But that to me was proof of the
That's a Robert
talking about
McNamara
DNA.
moment.
Pardon?
It's a Robert McNamara moment.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
that really stuck with me. And that's where I sort of came to this idea that just like Noam Chomsky talks about generative linguistics, tribalism is probably to a certain extent genetic too, uh,
Yeah.
because that's where we come from. So you have to override it. It's the same with the N word. It takes effort and willfulness, right?
I think communications is such a broad thing, but it's so important. I used to get really upset when I used to see memes and people talking online about how, oh, let me guess, you have one black friend. because people did used to sort of use that. If they knew a black guy at the office, like the old Costanza thing, if they knew one black guy at the office that sat 8 cubicles away, they would count that guy as a friend, right? Like that kind
Excellent.
of thing. Now, I grew up, I literally had one very close friend that happened to be black. And I got to tell you, if it was not for that friendship, I don't think I would have even close to the understanding culturally that I have about black people right now.
Of
If it
course.
wasn't for the fact that I had one black friend. So I think that it's important that people dismiss that as if it's better to have no black friends or something.
But let me
Right?
ask you something. Here's where it gets difficult because I'm similar to you, except I don't really have that black friend. I had a neighbor. He ran for the NDP. Was
You had the
black.
Costanza version of the black friend, right?
No, but I really didn't. And I when I finally left that waspy private school, I went to Forest Hill, which was a predominantly Jewish school, and that was part of me getting in touch with my Jewish roots. Oddly enough, it was humor that
Yeah.
was the binding force. Jews tend to be funny and have a great sense of humor. Not that other cultures don't, but I grew up, so I was in a Jewish home. I was going to school with waspy kids, but I was totally into comedy and Saturday Night Live and all those kinds of things. And that aspect of my personality was completely lost on the waspy kids that I went to school with. My
Yeah.
parents pulled me out of that school, seeing that, oh, he's coming home with the swastika. And not to say that all those kids were racist. I think it was a symbol of rebellion. I didn't even know what it meant. Anyhow, uh, I go to the Forest Hill, and all of a sudden, my personality, which was built on, I mean, comedy is like a huge part of my life. I've got my favorite comics tattooed on my arm. I know you're a comedian as well. So that part of my personality came through with the Jewish kids, and I became someone that that people liked and enjoyed to be around. Not everybody, obviously, but yeah. So these things they run deep. I think it's to a certain extent beyond our control. But my question to you was,
Hmm.
so you don't have a lot of black friends. I don't have any, I don't think. And just because I'm a socially shut in person. That's probably the main reason. I don't go out. I'm a sort of a family guy and I love being at home and I'm a bit of a loner, I guess. How do you, this would be a great sitcom episode of some show. All of a sudden get black friends. What do you imagine physically what you have to do to, I've decided this morning, I'm going to get some more black friends.
That's a
When you go to
again.
the
That goes back to
basketball
that
court,
that goes back to that Seinfeld episode where he's just keeps on trying to make small talk, and then he invites him to dinner.
what they did an
So he,
episode like that? I didn't see that
yeah,
one.
where Costanza was trying to make it seem like he had a black friend. So he would invite
Oh,
him to
okay.
dinner and be like, "Hey, have you met my friend Jerome or whatever the fuck his
I
name
didn't
was?" Right?
see that one.
Oh, it was great. No, you know what? For me, it was hip hop.
But that's no, that's different. That's the appearance that he has a black friend. I'm talking
Yeah,
about if
yeah.
you genuinely want to have a black friend.
Well,
Uh,
I was
what do you
16.
do?
I was 16. I went to one high school in Whitby, and Nigel went to a different high school. But I was a rapper, and the only place, or the best place, I should say, to go to to spit lyrics in a studio, in a makeshift studio, was Nigel's mom's house. So I was in the record bar in Oshawa one time, and I was rhyming to the DJ that was playing some beat, and he just slid me Nigel's name and number, and I called him and set up a meeting for me to go and rhyme for him, and that's how we met. So it was hip hop. Like it wasn't just like walking through the food court and be like, "Hey, nice to meet you." I'm Jake. Like that wouldn't have
That you
happened.
had see, I play blues music. The problem is it's basically a white man's game now, the blues music. It really is. Yeah, black people tend to be into hip hop, rap, soul, whatever.
Yeah.
But anyways, I'm not going to go out of my way to meet black people. I don't have a feeling one way. I don't have a feeling one way or other about them if they enter my life organically and they're good people. Because again, then it's the old you know it's the spectrum thing, right? Why do I have to like them because they're black? you know, if the black guy's a jerk, I'm going to hate him. If a gay guy's a jerk, I'm going to hate him. If they're
It
good
was
people, I'm going to like them. But
it
I
was
just have no
culture.
exposure because I'm a shut-in.
It's well, it might be too late for you. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, no, but because when I was young and I was a teenager, um, I it was like punk to embrace black culture. There's hardly anybody in my school listening to hip hop.
Right.
I was a big Spike Lee fan. I love Do the Right Thing. I think it's one of the greatest films ever made. Um,
Fantastic
and
movie.
and that's how I was introduced, not just to racial politics, but politics. Like,
Yeah,
I didn't know what politics was until I saw Mookie throw the garbage can through Sal's
right through the
Pizzeria
window.
window at the
Sounds,
end.
yeah.
I didn't even know what, and then all of a sudden I rewound it so many
But
times.
you're
So like,
Italian. You had real skin in that game, right?
well,
That was
it
it.
irked me every time I heard Sal's kid use the N word so
Right.
casually. I was just like, I don't know, you should be doing that. Like I was hip to not using the N word in the 80s. Like, I just, it felt wrong. It felt like, viscerally incorrect, right, to do that. But
I'm
then
more. Go
sports,
ahead.
like, dude, I grew up between 1985 and 1992, all of these things in all these cultural things, and even athletics, like, growing up in Mike Tyson's prime, growing up in Michael Jordan's prime, and that coinciding with like hip hop literally exploding. Like, all I cared about was that kind of shit. And it made me feel punk because no one in my school, except for a
Right.
handful of people, were doing it. So it felt rebellious, right? And it
Yeah.
just stuck, right? And it's never going to go away. And I kind of, that my formative years were shaped by it, right? Like, so
Yeah.
I think
Like I
that,
said, you being a blues music player, one would think. I mean, all of my almost all of my biggest musical idols are black.
yeah,
Uh, so you would think that, but it's the reality is we're still so tribal. Like I remember I went to York University, and even then, at the supposedly, you know, well, then I woke wasn't a word, but higher learning place.
yeah,
When you would go to Central Square, I think it was called, everybody, the Jews hung out together, the Asians hung out together, the blacks hung out together. Obviously, there was exceptions, but generally that was true, and that was really meaningful to me.
yeah.
that that must be the natural default. You know what I mean? It's
Why is
not.
that ginger hanging out with all those black dudes? Oh, that's
Yeah.
Michael Rappaport. Don't worry about him.
Oh yeah, Michael Rappaport. What do you think of? See, Lee Kern is basically. You didn't know who he was, but you obviously follow Michael Rappaport on
I
X.
know who he is because he's been in a lot of my favorite movies from the 90s. Yeah.
But you don't follow his social media with the
I
October?
know that he's very outspoken about his
Oh my God! So
defense.
Lee
Yeah.
Kern's the
Yeah.
exact same way. He's British though,
Okay.
and he worked with Sacha Baron Cohen, and I think on Borat he was nominated for an Academy Award. Those two just went to Israel together, and they were
Mm.
putting on shows like in theaters. I don't really know the nature of the shows, but it's interesting to me because uh,
He's like you then. There's a lot of left leaning people out there that have a fairly conservative stance when it comes to Israel, right? Is that fair?
no, I don't think so because this isn't. I don't think this, for me, anyways, it doesn't break down to liberal or conservative. Although I'm making observations based on people on the left who seem to be anti-Israel. But for me, I don't think it's that at all. For me, it's probably what you described as trauma mixed with. I like to think rationality. That
Yeah.
I've made a delve into the history. I understand it. I don't think the Jews are perfect. The Israelis are perfect. But at the end of the day, as I said to you at the beginning of this conversation, when you're dealing with a group like Hamas, which can't even hide their hatred and their goal of, I believe, annihilation, uh, it makes it very easy for me to side with Israel.
Yeah.
And
I
I
think it's
also will condemn. I will also condemn the settlers, the Jews who go out of their way to make problems for the Palestinians. There are extremes on both sides, but
yeah.
they're not, but nothing. I don't think there's anything that's close to Hamas's ethos in Israel.
What are you working on right now, and when is your next sort of on the
Oh,
road trip with Kenny?
yeah, we're hitting Alberta, which should be interesting because some guy saying that my left wing politics people aren't going to be showing up to the Kenny versus Spenny shows. I wrote
Oh, that
back. I
damn it.
wrote back. Actually, I'm a centrist. Eat shit and block them. But anyways, uh, so we're doing that, and then we're hitting the states in February. We're booking the shows now. We're doing another run of the U.S. The central states. But what I'm also excited about is I'm opening a Patreon page
Oh,
to make money. Uh, but it's going to be my music. It's going to be about 5 or 6 different shows, short subject shows,
yeah.
reaction videos, recommendation videos, live streams, And it's going to cost $1, $2 a month. I can't remember what we're charging, and then you can go up to another level and you'll get access to more material. So I've been shooting that stuff and organizing it, and I'm hoping within the next month or two I'll have that up and running. And
Does the
it's
live
it's
stream
fun.
include does the live stream include you and Kenny's appearances at these different cities?
No, because that you should know that that would kill the if we put on
Oh,
our
right, yeah,
stand-up
yeah,
show, right, it kills the material for where we've never been, which we're definitely
that's right.
cognizant of. Kenny's been doing his live stream and he's doing really well with it. And believe it or not, behind closed doors, he's actually a friend and
No,
wants me to be successful at it. And he's been giving me advice, which I appreciate.
oh,
And
do you think people want to see? This is an interesting question because of the context of your on-screen relationship. Do
yeah.
people find it a little bit annoying when he's nice to you in public?
No,
You know what I
because
mean?
it doesn't
No.
it doesn't really happen. I'm the honest one that will although no, I shouldn't say that. Kenny, the most he'll say in a live situation, and I know he means it as a compliment, he'll say, "There's only one Spenny." And
Yeah,
that to
there
him is
really
a
is.
compliment. Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, by the way, yeah, you wrote you tweeted that. Yeah, but there's only one James. It's not something that,
No, there's a
like
thousand of them. I have a Bible named after me and everything, and
oh
I'm not
bullshit.
even that big.
Anyways, believe me. So there's that. But the reality is, we used to argue about this. It's funny you mention it. I don't know if you've ever seen the Sunshine Boys.
Not offhand, maybe.
Sunshine Boys was a Neil Simon play that became a movie. It won an Academy Award for it was George Burns and Walter Matthau, and they played
No way.
vaudeville an old vaudeville duo, like
Oh,
comedy duo that did sketches in the vaudeville era. And then we fast forward to, I guess it would be this 80s, maybe the late 70s, and NBC is going to do a rehash of that genre of entertainment. And they want Lewis and Clark was their names. To come back and rehash their famous doctor sketch on an NBC special. So Mathau's nephew is played by Richard Benjamin, and he's going to orchestrate the two of them to come back. The problem is they absolutely despise each other, but they know that they have to do it. But in the movie, there's this wonderful moment which really works for me. It just doesn't work for Kenny, which is with all their vitriol and all their fighting, some guy disses the George Burns character, and Willie, played by Matho, fights back and says, "Say what you want about him, but he's the greatest straight man that ever lived." And my heart melts, right? Because all you see them is fighting. But that's me. I love things that feel good, and sometimes I like schmaltz and cheese. Kenny is genetically against that stuff. So all that kind of good stuff would come from me, but not him. But we've had a hell of a ride, a hell of a relationship, and I fucking love him. I know he loves me. He won't say it. Maybe he will. Yeah, he does say it. Actually, that's not fair. But
I've heard him. Yeah, no, I actually have a memory of. I can't remember. It was an interview from years ago, but he did compliment you, and it did sound weird. I'm not gonna
yeah,
lie.
yeah. No, once he does these podcasts, these commentaries on Kenny, which I'm doing. That's going to be part of my Patreon. I've already shot them 10 episodes. And with just me doing commentary without him, and he does it without me. He does it with Sebastian, who was we worked with him on the series. And I happened to go on it one day, and I'm on it, and Kenny is saying that Spenny did nothing. It was all me. He burns every bridge that we have, and it's just like, holy fuck, dude. Like,
Yeah.
and then I called him. I said, I don't mind you saying shit about me, but you were so serious.
Yeah.
It was so because we have a lot of issues. He has more issues with me than I do with him that go back decades from amount of work we did on the series because I got married, I had twins, and I was living in LA.
And
And
then
he
how you
doesn't
made
let
a bad impression on the South Park boys. He's never let you live that
Yeah,
down too.
which I could argue actually made it go into business with us because
He could
because
argue that.
Matt Stone said the next day, he goes, "I had no idea how real these guys were till we hung out," and that's a story. That's a show in of itself that evening. But
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, I don't mind saying but you have to, in a sense, not manufacture, but you have to drudge up the histrionics to get to where we are on stage where we're going after each other.
And so on
It's
stage again, what are the Alberta dates and what cities?
Oh man, I don't know. I don't have it here. Sorry. It's all on my social media. By the way, I lost my Facebook page. Can
Yeah,
I
I've
tell you
got
this?
never. I thought that was Kenny.
No, I got it. This is classic Spenny. I'm embarrassed to say this, but this is exactly what happened, James. So I'd already lost my YouTube channel because of a series I did called X Rated, which was arguably pornography. It was a series I did for Super Channel about a guy trying to break a sexual world record. Anyways, great series. It's going to be on my Patreon page. It's incredible. I'm so proud of it. Anyways, the the I get an email forwarded to me from a guy I used to work with saying that a podcast wants me. I looked them up. They're a big podcast in South Africa. Maybe it was Australia. And they're going to pay me $5,000 for an hour. So just like the cartoon, right? Bing, bing, bing. My eyes.
Yeah,
$5,000. What are you paying me, James, today?
I'm paying you $5,000. No, I'm not paying anything.
Sweet fuck all is the translation. And when I do Dean shows, I'm happy to do them because I love these
Yeah.
guys. But you don't get paid. But so my head exploded. So they said, I reached out, I talked to them. They said, a guy's going to call you. He's going to go through what you have to do on Facebook in order to set it up so that we can pay you. And we always kept saying the paying. So,
Yeah.
long story short, I went on a Zoom call with this guy. It wasn't Zoom, it was a site that made to look by Zoom, and they hacked my account. And I've
Oh,
lost my Facebook page. I have 80,000 people, which isn't a lot, but it's a lot for me. That's gone. They're saying I can never get it back, but I'm still fighting for it.
what
So,
an elaborate
again,
hack that is. What were they at?
oh
Like,
no, no, and now you can read about it. It's brilliant. It's absolutely. In fact, when I was on the phone with this guy, I actually said, this would be a great scam if you were. And he was scamming me the
did you send
moment
her
I
your
said it.
banking information or anything like that?
No, no, no. And then I changed all my passwords.
Yeah.
Um, but he did get it because it was supposed to be a Facebook event. The appearance on this fictitious podcast. It's a real podcast, by the way, and they've now put up on their thing. Some group is going around saying that you can be on our show, and they're saying we don't pay anybody, please don't do it. But I found that out too late. So as classic naive idiotic Spenny, I got fucking hacked, and it's going to take me who knows how long to get it back, if I ever do.
What kind of fucking genius is Mark Zuckerberg if he can't fix that? Like that should be easy. No?
No, I don't think he should be responsible for the stupidity of people like me.
I don't think so.
I'm hopeless. I really am naive. That's why Kenny versus Spenny worked. Just like tribalism, I have to consciously try not. I want to believe people are good. I want to believe good things can happen, and that's the perfect mark.
It's a lot easier to realize that like I've realized this over the last year. I've been dealing with a very weird situation of being gaslit for like a year. Where you think that you're going crazy and then someone visits you who doesn't know anything and they lean into you. I had a date with this girl a few months ago, and she leans in at one point and she's like, "What's all that chatter?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "I hear a man and woman talking. Do you have a TV on in the other room?" And up until that point, I was ignoring that because I was had been convinced that I was hearing it, but it wasn't happening. So two, three, four witnesses later, I'm like realizing that, and I have a good idea of who it is, and I'll just leave it at that. I have been put in a spot where they wanted me to feel like I was hearing things, and then all of a sudden, all these Captain Obvious moments happened. Like I've been to London, L.A., Chicago, Milwaukee, Washington, New York, all in the last 6 months. It's never happened anywhere else except for my home. Right. So I have this doctor, this friend of mine, his dad's a doctor, and I was telling him about it. He's like, James, there's no such thing as geographically specific schizophrenia. I'm like, oh,
I was going to
right.
say schizophrenia, but I.
So I've been gaslit to make it seem like I'm hearing things that I'm not, that I'm actually hearing. And it's not just the one person that anyone that watches it could guess who it is that I'm speaking with, but there is a certain cult, and we won't mention their name now, that I have been reporting on, that now everything makes sense. And it makes sense going back to 2021 when I was like in Creemore and there were like cars parked on the driveway where I was, and I'd walk up to them and they'd drive away quickly. There's like people in the lawyer for this cult. He grew up a mile away from where I live, and his family still lives there. And I'm just like, oh my god,
You might
it's
want
such.
to, if you already haven't, check out a podcast my wife is listening to called Fair Game with Leah Remney and Mike Rinder.
Mm,
These are apostates from the Church of Scientology. Fair Game
yeah,
is their
I have watched
policies.
that.
Okay,
It's
so
amazing.
but then there's a podcast which is even it's amazing what they
Yeah.
will go through if they don't like you or if they
Oh
think you're trying
god.
to hurt Scientology.
Well,
It
we were
sounds
talking about this. I was talking about that because I talked to a lot of the ex members that I have in my show, and the sort of main question that all these people have had for me over the past 2 years has been, how come you haven't been sued? I'm like, I don't fucking know. They're suing everybody else, right? And everyone that they're suing or terrorizing, I've had on my show. And then I didn't put it together until recently that all of these crazy experiences that I've been having, dude, I got a techie to look at my phone. They've had my phone since 2021, right? I have keylogger spyware on my computer that it's apparently it's been on there for over a year. So I've been like completely monitored and um yeah, you gotta listen. And now it's fighting back time, and I feel pretty good about it. And that's all I can really say about it. Because my lawyer's probably having a conniption fit right now. But it's I don't even remember what point I was making. But there's just like an idea behind. Um, what were we talking about just before you said this? Because it was important. Like the idea that people
Oh,
try
you
to
were talking
encapsulate.
about what the PBB was doing to you, if I can.
Yeah, I can't remember why I even led into that, but just the idea of being sort of
Oh,
like,
because you were talking about the gaslit and hearing voices and thinking you were.
yeah, even that, whatever. There's a lot. Oh, I know what it was. I don't. You were saying that you don't know if people are good or if people are evil. It's a good salad bar because there are people out there capable of things that I never thought human beings should be capable of, and motivated by such hostility and superficial reasons. Where I don't have faith in humanity as a whole, but I
Right.
do try to individualize as much as I can, and then
Yes.
and I'm never not going to trust my instincts ever again. Like I'm really not.
See,
I have
that's
a
the
good.
thing. I have to reverse engineer that. My instincts are so bad that I have to pause, take a deep breath. If my wife, who's very, very intuitive and smart about this stuff,
Mm.
uh, I have to say, well, wait a sec. You know, no more working without getting a deposit. No more. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Things that I used to do without even thinking about it because I thought people were like me. It's
I
sad, but
respect
that's
people. I respect people that I do business with where they don't ever put me in a position where I have to trust them. You know what
yeah.
I mean?
Well, I
They
do.
give me
I
my
well, I don't
deposit. They give
anymore.
me
But
they give me my deposit, or they pay me on time. They don't ask me for free things. I don't ask them for handouts, and we all just have a good time, not caring about trust because we're being respectful, right? Like I
yeah,
think,
but for example, the fact that I got sucked into this podcast scam after I've had a lifetime of being taken advantage of, ripped off, stolen from. I could go on. We could do 8 episodes about my idiocy with
yeah.
this stuff. It's just like it must be in your DNA, kind of like you have to stop, take a breath, override what you normally would do in order to keep yourself safe.
No, I agree. Okay, we'll leave it at that. Spenny, you know what you should do before you go to Alberta, whatever those dates happen to be. Give Lachlan Cross a message and go on his morning
Yeah,
show.
yeah. I
Yeah,
talked to Locke. He's hilarious.
yeah, he is
Um,
hilarious, and he's got the best morning show in Edmonton. So
oh yeah, yeah, you're right. I've done his show before on the phone, but maybe Kenny and I'll go in. Yeah.
yeah,
Cruise something.
yeah, Cruise FM. I always
Yeah.
get the call numbers wrong, so I just say 96.8 because I know that's not right. But
All
whatever
right,
it is.
James. I got to take my daughter to a medical
No, I'm
appointment.
the one letting you go. I've already started the letting go thing. I hate it when guests do
Sorry.
that. I gotta go.
Sorry.
I know. I just told you you're going.
Okay.
All right,
Fair enough.
buddy. We'll see you next time.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, man. Spencer Rice, aka Spenny. That was fun. Tomorrow I'm gonna do Casual Friday earlier. I'm gonna try to see if I can get people to come on at around 6:30, and we'll go till 8. Um, for a bunch of reasons. I don't have to tell you what they are. Big thanks to Spenny. That was a really good conversation, especially the beginning. No one has honest conversations about things that happen in the Middle East, and that was a good conversation. I think sometimes it's good to not necessarily sit there and be a cheerleader for one side or the other, but just to talk about how people talk about it, I think can be important. So we'll see you tomorrow on Casual Friday, and thanks for watching Black Bolt.
Blackmore, black Blackmore, 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 Black